Okay, welcome to my video for week 2. I hope everybody is doing well. We are going to be talking this week about um, legal and ethical issues, and then we'll also get to, in chapter 4, we're going to talk about some of the basic skills needed to do crisis counseling. And one of the themes that you'll find, I probably say this every video, so just work with me. And I do that on purpose because it's important. I really want y'all to walk away. This is probably not the most important thing, but it is something that I want you to walk away with from this class, a sense that, or an understanding that crisis counseling is very, very different from regular counseling in many ways, and yet at the same time, there are still very many strands of similarity that run through them both. So we'll just touch on that a lot, on and off. Okay, so um, we are going to look at some of the challenges when it comes to confidentiality and privacy. When it comes to crisis counseling, I want you to, and remember, it's funny because I work really hard not to get pigeonholed into one mindset of one setting, right? Okay, so that's another thing that's different about counseling. And at the same time, you may be sitting in your church office or in your counseling office or in your community mental health office and dealing with someone who is in crisis. So it's not completely, we can't completely exclude that as a possibility. So sometimes as I'm talking, you're thinking, well, he's thinking like in the office, yeah? Or he sounds like he's talking about like he's out on the street somewhere and there's been a crime and he's there. Like, yeah, yeah. And oftentimes not on a crime scene literally. Maybe a disaster scene, yes. Disaster, big building fire, house fire, could be hurricane, earthquake, those kinds of things. I, yeah, okay. Um, I'm sorry, my mind is like, well, I think I said that last video, so I'm trying not to repeat. So obviously you're standing on the street beside the building that is just burnt down, and there's there's 300 traumatized people around, standing around, and there's caseworkers, and there's first responders, fire and police. There's people everywhere, right? And you're having a conversation with someone, and they are self-disclosing. They're opening up. They're pouring out their heart. You that's an area of sensitivity, so to speak. And yet, if they're saying whatever they're saying, then at some level you're like, okay, if they're okay with everybody in the world knowing this, then okay. I still could see myself in a situation like that saying, hey, why don't we step over this way and just go try to find a little bubble space of a little bit more room or privacy, if you will. HIPAA, good old HIPAA. HIPAA, I'm just something Privacy Act. I'm sorry. I could have sworn I wrote that down as to what HIPAA was. I think I do later, maybe. Um, but HIPAA, I think of HIPAA in the hospitals. I think of HIPAA in when you go see your doctor. Quick story. I was just the other day, I was at my doctor's office, and a nurse walked in and said, "Hey, Doc, Mary is ready for her shot." And he's like, "Okay, I'll be there in a minute." And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I went, I said, "I can read your mind right now." And he said, "What?" And I said, "HIPAA violation." And he laughed. I have a really good relationship with my doctor. He laughed and shook his head, and he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, we get probably 2 or 3 of those a day." He said, "I will definitely talk to her." And not that I care. I mean, I wasn't worried about it, and I don't know who Mary is, and it was first name only, but still, that was a HIPAA violation. There's no question about it. Just straight up, flat out, that was a HIPAA violation. So the even that someone is seeing you is private, right? So like my wife's a CPA. She's very confidential. I don't know who her clients are. It's hilarious because we have friends that is her client. I have no idea. These friends will start talking to me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm completely lost. What are you talking about? What? And they're like, well, Annie does my taxes. And I'm like, oh, so okay, well, no, I didn't know that. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, confidentiality, that's a good thing. And they're like, oh, yeah, cool, thanks. Like, I've had people that'll come talk to me and tell me, pour their heart out. And maybe not even a client, they just come pour their heart out to me, maybe in the lobby at church or something. And then the next week or a few days later, they're standing there with Annie and I, and they start talking about the situation. They look at Annie and they're like, yeah, he's filled you in on this, right? And she's like, no, he doesn't tell me anything. Someone shares something with him. And I'm like, yeah, no, we don't. No. And they're kind of surprised. People are really shocked about that. It's like, well, that's how serious and how important confidentiality is. And that's what HIPAA protects. FERPA is, I call it HIPAA for school. So this has to do with the school and university settings and the sharing of information of your student, of the student, a student. When your child, if some of you have experienced this, when your child goes off to college, once they are 18 years old, you don't have free access to their information unless they have written permission for you to have access to their information. And I always joke with my kids, like, okay, if I'm paying for your college, then I have access to your information. So you can sign that form or you're on your own. So yeah, it's never been an issue, but that's, like, yeah, I'm going to have access to my child's information. I'm sorry. If I'm going to pay for your college, I am going to have access, period. But they do have to sign. You can't just call up the school and say, hey, we got this medical issue, blah, blah, blah. They're going to be like, whoa, time out. I'm like, okay, the code is, blah, blah, blah. And yes, we have a signed form that we can talk. And oh, okay, now we can talk to you. Thank you. The Tarasoff case was, well, we'll get into that more later. So this is an overview of everything that we're going to talk about. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. I really kind of already have. Sorry about that. Okay, so when we talk about prevention, we're talking about preventing an ethical breach or a legal issue, right? So how do you prevent? Now, obviously, we're not talking about preventing a disaster, right? Because if there's a disaster, there's a disaster. But what we're talking about is us being prepared in such a way that we don't do something foolish to get ourselves in legal or ethical trouble in the midst of a situation. So number one is wellness. That's your wellness. So we talk a lot about self-care and burnout and preventing burnout, and especially if you're going to go into the area of dealing with crisis a lot, then you really are going to need to take good care of yourself. You want to talk about the cases that you deal with, and I put on here on a regular and frequent basis. I put on here with colleagues, and here's what I'm saying. First of all, you need ideas from your colleagues, and you need understanding from them that you can't get from family members. And second of all, you cannot overburden your spouse with this kind of stuff because they aren't built for it. You are, they're not. You can share some stories with your spouse vaguely and generally. Again, confidentiality works with spouse as well. I can't say, well, Jim Johnson there in the church. I was talking with him the other day, and he beat his wife half to death, and she ended up in the hospital. But we're working on it. You can't do that. Like, oh my gosh, like yeah, no. You're dealing with those kind of situations, and you are not carrying that because you're, number one, giving it over to the Lord, and you're, number two, talking with colleagues that are going to understand and be able to help you. And when I say basic self-care, we could go on and on about this and talk about this, and we may in our live class, we may go into this more. But vacation, relax, rest, play, have fun, work hard, yes, but don't only work hard. Balance your caseload, and sometimes that's impossible. I had a student call me the other day, and she said my caseload at work has gone from, and she's a caseworker for child placement, um, adoption and foster care. And her caseload, she said it went from, she said with Obamacare and the whole government changes with Medicare, Medicaid, um, the money has gone way, it's been cut way back, costs have increased, and the money that they're giving these community mental health centers has decreased greatly. And she said, my caseload has gone from, what did she say, like somewhere in the 40s, maybe 50 to like 80, 85. And I'm like, yeah, mm-mm. So sometimes that means quitting and moving. And she's actually was talking to me because she's getting a referral, a reference to go work somewhere else. I'm like, yeah, probably need to work somewhere else. Yeah, because that's not good. Okay, so keep sharp, keep your continuing education hours going, workshops and seminars. Some of you based on your licensing or based on what you've got going on, some of that's required. Pastors oftentimes are required to do a certain amount of training. Um, and then peer supervision and consultation. If you have a supervisor of any kind, whether it be a peer informal situation or an actual supervisor, you want to communicate with them about what's going on as you're dealing with crisis, as well as about how you're doing. And that's an individualized thing. Some supervisors want to know and want to hear, and others don't. If they don't, you're going to have to find a peer that you can consult with and talk to that wants to hear and that cares, a friend that is a counselor also or a pastor. Counselors and pastors need friends. Um, yeah, we do. And many are bad about that, which is bizarre to me because I feel like that's a pretty relational, relational deal. Um, all right, so here we go. Here's details on HIPAA. Um, One of the things that HIPAA covers is electronic information handling systems. Now an interesting phrase, and in other words, we're not talking about we're talking about storage of files. Your program either is or is not HIPAA approved, and you need to make sure your program is HIPAA approved for uh, your filing system, your note taking and your record keeping, all that, right? So that electronic system must be HIPAA approved. But this also goes into if you're doing working with someone electronically. So this could be a video conferencing type situation. It could be even email is included. Phone is still considered pretty safe, although yes, obviously phones can be tapped. Um, so if you're going to do a lot of online counseling, your you need to make sure you have a HIPAA approved program, and they are out there. I mean, it's like the field gets it that we have to have that. Um, um, Training on HIPAA and enforcement of HIPAA is quite costly for hospitals and organizations and community mental health centers. Um, HIPAA is not designed to interfere with emergency care. So, in other words, the person, you come to a building that's blown up, a hurricane has come through, and the person's laid there passed out. And what this means is you don't look at the person and go, I can't get consent to treat them, so I think I'll just leave them there. Right? So you got like common sense, right? You need to document, right? Patient was, client was, person was unable to respond. I asked the person if it was okay for me to help them, if it was okay for me to touch them. Literally, you understand in today's world, touching someone unwanted is assault. It's just insane. It could be even sexual assault. It's like I touched them on the shoulder, yes, and they did not want you to, and they interpreted it as sexual, and that is a sexual assault. Like, oh, okay. We live in a weird world. I saw a movie one time where people didn't touch each other. It was one of these futuristic deals, and people didn't touch, like, at all, ever. They didn't even Sexually. They didn't even come together sexually. It was all artificial insemination was the only way reproduction happened. So people were never touched, which is a sick and twisted and sad thing. Um, and I think of the germ thing, and people want to shake people's hand, and I'm sorry, guys, but we need to touch each other. We just need to touch. Now we need to be we need to be appropriate. We need to be careful. If there's someone that doesn't want to be touched, we want to make sure we're not touching somebody that doesn't want to be touched. So don't misquote me on that. Don't misunderstand me on that. But we don't want to lose that completely out of our society. In other words, um, hmm. Yeah, and there's more information on HIPAA. Again, I'm not really here to teach you every jot and tittle. I want you to read the section on HIPAA, and you'll see it. FERPA is again what I call HIPAA for school setting, privacy of information, protection of information, those kinds of things. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. All right, Tarasoff versus Regents. This is the Board of Regents of the University of California. So there's a man named Potter who was sitting with his counselor. This is a very interesting case, and it is iconic. I mean, it is huge in terms of our field, in terms of what we do when it comes to reporting if someone says they're going to harm somebody else. So you're talking with someone, you're a pastor and you're ministering to someone, you're a counselor and you're talking with somebody, and they say, my girlfriend, I'm just done. She's messing around. She's seeing other people. She's sleeping around. I'm killing her. I'm done. I'm just going to kill her. Now, we have to be uh, wise as serpents and harmless as dove. Here's an example. I had a client say one time, man, I'm just so mad I could kill him. Tucked it away and thought, you don't say that in today's world, but okay. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people would say that. It was just an expression of frustration, right? I've probably said it at some point 10, 20, 30 years ago, like, oh, so mad I could kill him. It's just a saying. It's not appropriate, viewed as appropriate at all today. You could argue that it wasn't appropriate 30 years ago or 20 years ago, but nonetheless, it was said frequently 20 or 30 years ago. And does it mean that I am, okay, I'm going home, I'm getting my gun, I'm creating a plan, I'm going to stake out their house? And no, I'm just mad. It's just an expression, and it just means I'm really mad at them, right? So you stop. So back to my story. My client said that. And so I heard him out and listened to him. And I think that there was a pause when they said, I'm so mad I could kill him. It was just a dead silence. And I'm sitting there, and they're sitting there. And I said, kill him, huh? And they said, yeah, I'm just so mad. And wow. I did revisit that before they left. I said, okay, so earlier you said I'm so mad I could just kill him. Yeah, not really. And they're like, they smiled. And I was like, no, I'm just upset. Like, okay. You're good. Yeah, I'm good. All right. So you know what? I'm good with that, right? And I could document that I checked it on that I asked them if there was an intent to actually harm someone, and there was not, right? So and I probably would not document. Now we're going to get to documentation in a minute, but I want to say this now because this is perfect. Okay. So I probably would not say. I would not write in my documentation. My client said they were so mad they could kill them, quote, end quote. I probably wouldn't write that down. Why? Because that could be unnecessarily damaging to the client. Now, you're thinking, well, it's your notes. It's your private notes. It's sitting in a drawer. What do you mean? When you're taking notes, you're always thinking, I'm in court. What if this was read in court? And that puts a whole different light on what you're writing down. What if this was read in court? Ooh, yeah, that's a big deal. All right, so what I would say is my client described being particularly upset at their spouse or friend. So just to be safe, I checked to make sure there was no homicidal thoughts toward that person. And they denied all homicidal thoughts towards that person. Boom, done, covered. My tail's covered, and they are not damaged. right? So you see what I'm saying? So 3 months later, there's a custody battle, and all the records go to court. Has nothing to do with that, and some lawyer sees that written in there. Oh, so you said you wanted to kill your husband. Okay, so what's that about, right? And now man, we are dead in the water. We are messed up. And it was completely not necessary for that to be in there, right? So it's not withholding, because I told them in my notes that there is a concern, right? That there was a concern. This person was upset with someone, and I wanted to make sure that they were not homicidal toward that someone. And I checked it out, and they denied being homicidal. I didn't hear the wording. They denied any homicidal thoughts towards that person. I didn't say they aren't homicidal towards that person. So if this person does kill their spouse, and it's all out in court, I'm covered. And it's not all about just me being covered, but why unnecessarily put myself through my license being on the line and me going through a big, huge legal battle because I did not document the reality of what happened in our session. Okay, so that's documentation, and we'll get more on that in a minute. So the psychologist called the campus police and said, hey, this guy is threatening to kill his girlfriend, Miss Tarasoff. Did not warn the family, did not warn Miss Tarasoff. Miss Tarasoff was in, I think, Brazil. And he said, when she comes back from Brazil, I'm going to kill her. Like, ooh. And the person was fairly emotionally unstable. Okay. So homicidal, emotionally unstable, upset, ranting and raving, in other words. The police talked with the person and said, well, he seems perfectly rational, and he says he promises not to hurt her, so we're good. The psychologist wrote a letter and sent it to the campus police asking for something to be done, trying to ramp it up. The supervisor ordered that the letter be returned and all case notes be destroyed. Oh my goodness. That's like that supervisor should be in jail today still. Oh, Fairchild, that seems awfully harsh. Man, I'm just telling you, you do not destroy records ever, 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 ever. Okay, so maybe they shouldn't still be in jail, but they should not be practicing whatsoever. They should have lost their license over that. Don't know if they did or not, but they should. Today they probably would. So when Tarasoff came back from Brazil, Potter killed her, and the family sued, understandably, the Board of Regents at the University of California because they did nothing to protect. California Supreme Court deemed that there was a duty to warn. Now, the flip side of that is that as a counselor, we have ethical standards. All kinds of different organizations write ethical standards, and one of them is the American Counseling Association, which is kind of the Bible on. I don't mean that sacrilegiously. I'm just saying it is the thing, right? And it's real fuzzy. Do I warn or do I not warn? Let me just tell you, this is not something that you take lightly. If you're going to warn, if you're going to call up someone's spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend and say, hey, I just need to warn you, your boyfriend or girlfriend has threatened to kill you, man, that is not something you do on a whim, right? So you need to consult. Before I did that, I would call my licensing board. I would run it by them. I would document everything I could imagine to document. I would run it by colleagues. I would document all of my collegial supervision, peer supervision that I got. I have never done that. I've never been in a situation where I felt that I needed to do that. But it does come up from time to time, and you want to take it very seriously if you ever get to that point. All right. These are legal terms, negligence and malpractice. They are related. So if you are negligent, that means you have failed to care for to a level that you have a duty to care for. And so when this is breached, it is considered negligence. And this, you've got malpractice insurance, and it is a problem. Some of the things would be abandoning a client, or the client's perception of you abandoning them. In other words, you may terminate with a client, or you may, and that's the term we use. Yes, I know that sounds so like death or final, terminate. Oh, well, yeah. Um, or you may um, refer someone for other services, and they don't get the referral, they don't understand the referral, the information is unclear, you didn't document that you referred. I gave them 3 names of 3 um, professionals that they needed to contact, that they had the opportunity to contact. Upon termination, ending our relationship, we summarized, we went over our progress. I gave them community resources, let them know they felt free to call me back anytime they felt a need, or if they came into a point of crisis, those kinds of things. So if this stuff is written down and they come up and say, oh, they abandoned me, and you just show your notes and they're like, okay, you're good. Yeah, no, that you didn't abandon them. Documentation is your only defense if there's a problem. If it is not written down, it did not happen. If it's just that's yeah, but I didn't mean to, but my intent, but my heart, but all I do is care for people, all I do is love people. Dude, yeah, they could give a flying flip about that, because that's what everybody says when they're caught and they're in trouble. That's like, no, that does not, that has no weight, and if anything, it probably is a negative mark against you, which may be a head scratcher. Ask me about that in live class. So you want to write down everything. You want to write down the details that are relevant, but again, not too much information so as to needlessly hurt your client. So that's a weird balance, and everybody comes up individualized on a different place. Make sure your dates and times are always accurate. Be succinct, but don't be vague. You need to be specific and not vague. Vagueness is just, like, what are you saying here? I'm not really sure. Yeah, well, say what you need to say, but don't say too much and don't say too little. If you say too little, you're in trouble. You say too much, you hurt the client, and you may get in trouble as well. Okay, so there are a few exceptions to confidentiality. Confidentiality is drilled in our heads as counselors, rightfully so. I have had clients. I've had clients who, if I shared with you the name of who they were, they're so famous that you would know. You'd be like, "Whoa, really? You saw his kid?" Yeah, I did. I got a couple of those, and I'm not trying to brag. I'm just telling you. I know my best friends, my 35-year best friends, do not know that I've seen these people as clients. My one of my 35-year best friends is also a counselor, and he too has a list of famous people and or famous people's kids that he has seen, and that's all I know, but I don't know who those people are, right? So that's pretty serious. When you think about best friends who he knows everything about me, I know everything about him. We have shared our deepest, darkest, ugliest secrets, and we've not shared that with each other. That's crazy intense, right? um, my wife does not. Well, actually, my wife knows those because she was the secretary of the company at the time, so she was the one that set up the appointment and took the call. Short of that, there are tons of people that I've seen that she knows, and I know she knows them. She has no idea. Right. So that's when we talk about confidentiality, even the fact that I'm seeing someone is held confidence with great intensity. If someone is suicidal or homicidal, ideation or threats, ideation is a fancy word for thoughts, having suicidal thoughts, then we break confidentiality, right? We get help. And they get upset, they get angry, but that's okay. Later they'll thank you, hopefully. If not, it doesn't matter. Um, especially if you saved their life or someone else's life. And there are types of abuse that confidentiality goes out the window. So if I'm sitting there with a client and they tell me that they have sexually abused their child, boom, done. I'm reporting it. I have a legal and a moral and an ethical obligation to report it, and we're done. If somebody's parent is staying with them and they're physically or sexually abused their parent, which I know that's like, you got to be kidding, that happens. Yes, it does. We live in a very, 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 very fallen world, very sick and very twisted. When you talk about physical abuse of an intimate partner, we used to call it domestic violence, spouse abuse. Let's say you report it and the Adult Protective Services shows up at their house and they don't intervene at a very intense level. In other words, they don't take the person off in handcuffs, which is probably not going to happen. Then what do you think is going to happen on the other side of that? That person is going to beat the living daylights out of the person that they have been beating. May put them in the hospital, may kill them. And at some level, this unchecked, they will kill them, right? So if a man is beating his wife somewhere down that line, down that road, he will kill her. I've heard it said in professional settings that if a man puts if he chokes a woman, that he will kill her. At some point, he's going to kill her. It's just statistically, it's like 98%. If he's choked you, he's going to kill you, period. Oh boy, I get riled up, man. I tell you what. That's one of, one of the questions that may come up is what's a difficult client? This came up last semester in a class. And this is a difficult client for me, a man who's physically abusive. I just don't have much room or space or place or grace for that. Sorry, and there are people who do, and that's fine. That's good. Let's see. Obviously, sexual abuse, emotional abuse is going to be, again, emotional abuse is going to be hard to prove. It's going to be harder to do anything with. But if a child is severely enough emotionally abused, sometimes you can get some intervention there. And obviously, neglect is a form of abuse. You think of the kid who is not being fed. All right, that's neglect, not being paid attention to. Okay, so informed consent is another important term. People need to be informed as to what they are consenting to. So when you go to the doctor for a physical, there's all this paperwork. Well, if you read some of that, you'll learn that one of those forms is an informed consent. So you are going to sign that you consent to be treated by your doctor. I'll give you a radical example. I one time had a headache that was so severe I thought I was going to die. I ended up in the emergency room, and the doctor said, I think you might have spinal meningitis. And he said it's either viral or it's bacterial. If it's bacterial, it will kill you if we don't treat it very rapidly. If it's viral, you won't die. You will just be miserable for a few days. I was like, great, lovely. So what we need to do is a spinal tap. So he gave me an informed consent form, and it tells you on the informed consent form all of the possible negative effects of getting this treatment, a spinal tap, this test done. Paralyzed, partial paralyzed, death. I looked at my doctor and I was like, are you out of your mind? And he's like, what? I'm like, you gotta be kidding. You want me to do this, and these are the possibilities here. And he said, Brad, if you don't do this and you have bacterial meningitis, you will die. I said, oh, give me that form, let me sign it. Literally, I was in so much pain, but I was like, no, you are crazy. He was super cool about it, but I was like, wow. So it's a little bit different, obviously, but they need to know that there's going to be potentially some emotional pain. You're going to get some stuff stirred up, maybe severely so. How much does it cost? How long is each session? How long are we going to, we didn't do this for 10 years or 3 months or 2 months, those kinds of things we're going to talk about. You're going to define the relationships. You're going to find their role, your role, um, what to do in an emergency. Um, if you're in a crisis situation and you're trying to intervene and they refuse to intervene, other than pulling them out of a clump of burning coals because they've fallen because a burning building has burnt and they're going to die here in a second, you don't walk away from that. Um, but someone's sitting on the sidewalk and they're got a little blood on their head and they're all dusty from the earthquake, and you say, "Hey, can I give you a bottle of water? You want to chat for a second?" And they're like, "No, I want you to leave me alone." "All right, I'll come back and check on you in a little bit. Hang in there. I'll see ya. Yeah, bye." You have to withdraw. You have to move on. So uh, people must consent when you go and get when you go and do a training for CPR. It's one of the things they talk about. You have to ask the person, "Can I help you?" If you're going to do a Heimlich maneuver on somebody, are you okay with me helping you? Now, if they're passed out or they're choking half to death, they may be able to look at you and nod. They're like, yeah, okay, good. Right. So if you can't get that, you're going to have to make a judgment call. Or if the person's passed out, obviously, right, that's kind of irrelevant. But to the best of our ability, we want to explain to them what we're doing and why we're doing it. Um, and are you okay with me doing that? And usually we want that in written, but that ain't going to happen in the midst of a crisis, usually. Um, Termination is a little bit different in crisis than it is in regular counseling. So regular counseling, let's say I've been meeting with somebody for 3 months and they're meeting their goals, they're doing well, and I'm going to say, you're doing really good. We're going to need to wrap this up here pretty soon, I'm thinking. And oh no, I'm not ready for that. Okay, no, calm down. It's okay. Let's. Here's the goals. Here's the things we've accomplished. Here's what you have done and are doing, and it's all good. It's part of the process. Man, I'm thinking I see light beams coming through here. It looks kind of weird. I think I'll close that a little bit. All right. Um, Termination during a crisis situation may be, all right, I've got your bottle of water, you're breathing, you're sitting up, you're good. All right, you cool? You good? I'm gonna sit you here for a minute. I'm gonna come back and check on you, but pretty soon I'm gonna be out of the picture and gone, and you're gonna be gone. And I've given you a slip of paper with some names on it. It's in your pocket. It may not mean anything to you right now. You will find it later, and you're gonna have some resources, and we're good. We're good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, good. Thanks. See ya. We'll go grab the next person and say, all right, come talk to me. Right? I mean, so that's literally there's your termination process. What you've done is you have gotten them to some level of stability, and you've gotten them a next step. That's it. That's a piece of paper in your hand with phone numbers to call. Right? Next step. I've gotten you to the ambulance, and the paramedics are going to be working with you now. I'm going to leave. They're going to take over. Right? That's the next step. We got to keep you alive. Right? We got to stop the bleeding, literally, not metaphorically, literally. Right? um, so all of that's covered, right? All follow up, reason for, right? So progress summarized. We've gotten you progress summary. We've gotten you out of the burning building. You are hurting, but you're going to be all right. Um, the person is pinned. They're bleeding profusely. Um, Medics are not close by. You're going to do whatever you're going to do, whatever you know to do. You're going to try to get them some medical care quickly. You're going to try to get them unpinned. You're going to get help to get them unpinned. You're but you're going to be gone pretty quick after that, right? There's this triage process of life and death, and never mind your emotions right now. Let's just keep you alive. Let's keep you from bleeding out. Um, that how bad is it? What do you tell them when they say, how bad is it? I don't know. I'm not medical. You're hurt, and you know that, but we're going to get you help, and you're going to be okay. They're in so much shock. They're not going to remember most of that transaction anyway, so it doesn't matter a whole lot. You don't want to have this look on your face like, oh my gosh, you're bleeding to death. I mean, you you just want to be careful, right? So you are the face of calm, you are the face of stability, you are the voice of hope for Christ, right? You're like, hey, we're getting you help. You're going to be all right. Um, you're tying something around the bloody spot. You're ripping off your shirt and tying it around their bloody spot. You're, whatever. I mean, you do what you can do until someone gets there that can do better than what you can do when it comes to medical, and then you move on. Um, I can remember we used to live at an intersection that there was always a wreck. And I remember one time I went there and there's steam coming out of the car, and I'm thinking, is that smoke or steam? I think we're good. Airbags have been deployed. Pretty rough wreck. Lady sitting in her car, hurting. Um, Car still running. I was like, all right, I'm going to reach over and turn off your car. We need to get your car turned off. Turned off her car. Pulled the keys out to them on the floor. They're hers. They stay with the car. They stay with her. Um, I look her in the face. I say, hey, we've called 911. They're going to be here in just a little bit. Um, what's up? She goes, oh, whatever, my leg hurts. Or, I'm like, okay, you're going to be all right. Hang in there. They'll be here in a minute. So I'm calm. I'm reassuring. I'm there with her. I held her hand, I think, right? So, and she's like reaching out, like, ah. Uh, so in a situation like that, it's there you go. And then the medics come, I back up, and they take over. Spiritually, it may be you may find a very rare situation where this matters, right? Depending on how severe the crisis is, um, depending on what their religion is, and I have a decent idea of what your religion is. Just be smart. Don't be obnoxious and judgmental. And this is not the time for, what? You're a Muslim? You're going to hell, brother. Let me tell you about Jesus. You know what? Just shut up. No. Oh, but Fairchild, somebody has to tell them. Yeah. Just, whoa, slow down, right? Let's establish some rapport first. Let's take care of their crisis first. And then let's ask the Holy Spirit to lead us and guide us and give us the words to say that can be ministry to them. Sometimes and I'm not a big advocate of don't say anything ever. I'm not saying that, right? I'm saying be Spirit led. Say what the Holy Spirit tells you to say. Sometimes it is they have to go to their grave with a Christian loved me, saved my life, and was super kind and warm and loving towards me. Wow. Right? So there's your witness, right? If you're going to pray with someone, ask for permission. If they don't, just don't, well, I'm going to pray for you anyway because you need prayer. Like, dude, take it down a notch. That just sounds religious spirit, sounds legalistic, sounds not like Christ. Look at the rich young ruler and study it. Rich young ruler turned and walked away. What did Jesus do? Went and grabbed his elbow and said, brother, you need to understand what you're turning away from. You need to understand what you're walking away from. Do you realize what you're doing? No, he didn't do that. Rich young ruler turned and walked away. And what does Jesus do? And he turned and continued to speak with his disciples, to teach his disciples. That's it. That's it. He let them. He politely backed off. He allows us to make decisions. Keep that in mind. All right. It's a soapbox of mine, by the way. Okay, chapter 4. It's kind of interesting because the last week, the first chapter was long and the second chapter was really short, and it's turned out this way too, this time too, and I don't know what that's about. Let's see, where am I at? Minute-wise. 45 minutes. Whew, that's a long one. I'm sorry. We only have like 2 or 3 more slides to go, so hang in there. Priority one is to establish rapport. And by the way, yes, there's more than this in the book. And oh, and this is not in the textbook exactly like this. It covers all this stuff, but it's not in here. So solar skills comes from Gerard Egan, 1980s. I mean, this is old, but man, this is one of those old and reliable. Face the person squarely, open posture, don't cross, you're not crossing anything, right? No crossed arms, no crossed legs. Ladies, sit appropriately, right? But face them squarely, have an open posture, lean towards the client just a little bit. Eye contact, and relax. Relax. Um, you are a conduit of peace, hopefully. Right? Especially remember we're talking about crisis here. um, yeah, okay. Let's see, eye contact, the person, don't lean forward too much, don't get too close to them. Lean forward appropriately based on the intensity, right? The more I lean forward, the more intense. But again, physically, this is powerful, right? So don't get too close to them. There's going to be a question on your test about solar skills, and you need to understand this, and you need to understand this well. Here's a concept that I want to see in your test, in your response in your test. I can listen to you and be looking out the window, right? I'm like, oh, da, 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 da. And I can repeat back, and you're like, hey, you're not listening. Sure I am. You just said da 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 da. Yeah, that's what I said, but I still don't feel like you were listening. I'm right here. I'm listening. Jerk. Well, you're not. So there's listening, there's hearing what someone says, and there's listening. There is here's important. This is important. Communicating to someone that you are listening to them. How good are you at letting them know you are present, 100% powerfully present? Practice this with your friends or your family members or your spouse. Say to yourself, all right, tonight I'm going to go home. Today, at some point, unless it's midnight, then when you're watching this, then tomorrow I am going to sit with a friend. I'm going to sit with a family member, a child, one of your children, a spouse. I know some of you aren't married, but that's fine. I'm going to sit and I'm going to be silent for the most part, other than little, yeah, I hear you. And I'm going to work on a radical, drastic, just listen. I'm not going to fix, and we'll get to that. I'm not going to fix anything. I'm not going to give advice. I'm not going to ask them any questions hardly about their situation, maybe a prompt or two here, there, and yonder. But I'm just going to shut up and listen. And I almost guarantee you, if you do that long enough, if you do it 3 or 4 or 5 times, they'll notice it. They'll be like, something's different. What's up? And you grin and tell them. It's okay to tell them. All right, so this is very, very, very powerful. And guys, listen, when you're lost, when you're done, when you're stuck, yeah, you're praying. Behind the scenes in your head, you're going, okay, Lord, I have no idea what to say, no idea what to do. Shut up and listen, and use your essential be present, be there skills. And this is all you need to know right here. This will get you a long, 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 long way. Be aware of your body. Be aware of your what you're communicating. Remember, the content of what you say is only 7% of the power of your communication. The 93% is your body language and your tone of voice. So be aware. Your face is all like, right? They're like, dude, you okay? Yeah, but there's blood everywhere. No, you just keep your face straight until you pass out. That's what it takes. That's okay. You won't die. Get down low if you're going to pass out, especially if there's concrete around and sharp-edged furniture. But be aware. Be very aware of what you're communicating with your body. Be very, very, learn to be very aware. Again, this is one of those practice things. Sit there with people and like, what am I communicating with my body right now? This is not something that people naturally do necessarily, although some people do. Um, but be aware, become more aware of that. Um, Listen to their concerns, but keep safety in mind. So the building is a raging inferno. My kitten is in there. Yeah, I hear you, and I'm really sorry about your cat, but we're not going into the burning building for your cat. And I'm physically keeping you from it as well because you're going to die. And I hate it that your cat died, but your life is more valuable than your cat's. I'm sorry. My 5-year-old's in there. Okay, well, yeah, depending on how raging it is, right? I mean, if it's just completely 100% solid ball of flame, they may try to run into the building, and you may need to stop them. Um, that's a real, I mean, boy, I would hate to be in that. That's a real tough call because I'm thinking, okay, do I need to go in there and help them? And I'm going to die. And if it's at that, there's that level that clearly nobody's going in the building, right? And then there's that. Oh yeah, it's just a little bit of fire and a little bit of smoke. We can go in the building. And then there's the in between of like, we might could go in there and get a kid out and get back out, but we might not make it. Then that's the tough call right there. That's the tough one. So I don't have anything to tell you on that one. I have never been there. I hope I'm never there. I have no idea what I would do if I got there. I really don't. I don't think anybody really does until you're there because you just don't know. Um, it's okay to use silence. So if you ask a question and they're silent, just sit silently. It's okay. Sometimes just being just sit there with them. Don't stare at them. Don't stare them down. Just sit there with them. Don't ask too many questions. Understand the difference between open-ended question and closed-ended questions. Sometimes you need closed-ended questions because you need information, right? Understand that leading questions can be leading. You're doing fine, right? Yeah, that's leading. How are you? Um, do you ask your family, um, how did you sleep last night? Or do you ask them, um, did you sleep good? Did you sleep good is it's communicating to them that what you want to hear is, yeah, I slept good. That's a leading question. Oh, I just offended somebody. Somebody's like, what? Oh, oh, yeah, sorry. Suck on it for a while. Think about it. Chew on it. Now, that's leading. We lead all the time. When people do leading questions. Counselors are trained not to. I rarely do. I hope. I catch myself. I'll put it out there, and I'm like, oh man, dude, that was leading. Oh, sorry. Like with my kids or my family. Reflective. Learn how to reflect facts. Uh, so at uh, So it was about 7 o'clock when you realized the building was burning, and you dialed 911 immediately, and you started gathering up people and getting out. Yes. Okay, good. Um, Thoughts, what were you thinking? That's cool. You can reflect. Okay, so you were thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to die. Okay. What were you feeling? And this is good. This goes from least intense to more from yeah to more intense, right? Small, medium, and large. Feelings are the most difficult to appropriately reflect and accurately reflect, so be careful. You might ask the question, so you feeling scared, or what were you feeling? And sometimes it's real obvious. So you are ticked off, and they're like, yeah, I was, rah. Okay, good. So reflective listening, there's a whole lot in the textbook about that. Well, not a whole lot actually, but there's some in the textbook. That's very important. Paraphrasing, these are under attending skills, remember, and then summarizing. There's 3 different types of summarizing: focusing, signaling, and planning. Signaling them to move on to the next thing. Yeah, I got that. Move on to the next. Focusing, like they're just machine gun style. They're talking about all this stuff. So you're like, okay, so out of all these issues you've thrown out here, what's most important? What's bugging you most right now, or what's most important to you, or what scares you the most right now? Remember, this is crisis we're talking about. And then planning. And again, in crisis, that is going to be pretty short-term, immediate kind of stuff, usually, generally speaking. If they ever ask you, do I need to be in counseling long-term after this? The answer is you know what? Why don't you go to a counselor and you guys assess that together? You may only need a couple of sessions, but it's really, really beneficial and helpful if you will get to a point where you're okay before you stop going to counseling. So yes, you need to go see a counselor. And it's a judgment call. Sometimes every once in a while it's like, probably not. But you know, if you think you might want to, then that's fine. It's up to you. Um, so you get a feel for that one way or the other. Let's see, attending skills. Oh, look at that. We're done. That's it. All right, this was a little long. Sorry, guys. It was almost an hour. I try to keep it, more 30, 45 minutes-ish. But all right, I'll see you all in class. Goodbye. God bless. Have a great week.